And we are live. Yo, what's good, y'all? We back. We bike like four flats on a Cadillac, like the passenger seat with your nigga laying in it. We back to another episode of this here podcast called Introspective Thoughts. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'm motherfucking tired, but we're gonna make this happen. Shit happens, it is what it is. Hopefully y'all have survived through election night, election week, election weekend, what may be the purge, what may be the Hunger Games, I don't know. Whatever the fuck happens, whatever. Yeah, before we get into everything, I have to say rest in power to the great legend Alex Trebek. Found out on November 8th that he passed away from pancreatic cancer. I can't think of anything else to say but rest in power to that man, because I know he shaped a lot of people's childhoods, including mine. I have a great memory of sitting in my grandmama's house at 3:30 after Judy came on, after Mathis came on, after Judge Joe Brown came on. There was Jeopardy. And even though I didn't know half of the things that they were asking on there, I still participated in what I did know. But rest in power to Alex Trebek. Thank you for everything that you've done in this life. And may your soul transcend to the next level, and hopefully you get the rest that you deserve. Now, beyond that, I have a special guest here, another guest here on this podcast, a great friend, my best friend, my brother, assistant principal, educational leader, all that great shit. I mean, he just does great things for great people, and he is great people. Welcome to the show, my brother, Mr. Fabien McGill.
How you doing, my brother? Appreciate it. Much love. Thank you.
Man, like I told you, I'm motherfucking tired, but you know, here we are. When y'all see this, just know when y'all see this, it's like 6 o'clock in the evening. So, and I'm going to bed after we do this. I don't care that y'all know this. It is what it is. Whatever. Today's topic, we're going to talk about some educational things today. I feel like that has kind of been a running theme as of late, but you know, it is what it is. But I mean, I'm a teacher. Y'all know that. That's what I do. But before we get into that, tell people about yourself, what you do, this, that, and the third, what you do, what you look like, all that great stuff.
Well, not what I do, what I look like. As he said, thank you for having me. Currently, I'm an assistant principal in an elementary school. This is my first year during COVID, so things are a little different, right? So I have many hats at the moment, but I just look at myself as an educator, through coaching, through tutoring, through teaching, and now leading. So that's who I am.
All right. Well, welcome. Shout out to you. Shout out to all of the educators out there, because as somebody who's not even in the classroom or in the school right now, but is still very 10 toes down in education, I salute every single person that is making this Zoom shit happen, because I have no idea how y'all are making this happen, or even if y'all are in person, because I know it depends on the state, depends on the district, depends on the city, depends on the county, depends on wherever you at. But I know for me, ain't no way in hell I'd be making this stuff happen. I'd be like, all right, I need to take a sabbatical for the year until y'all figure this shit out. I can't do it. We gotta go. But salute to all the educators that's making this shit shake, because y'all been the GOAT. We been the GOAT. Even though people don't recognize it, people don't give a fuck about it, it is what it is. We make it happen. We make it do what it do, because that's what we do. So, with that being the case, let's go and jump into this conversation. We're going to talk about Black education. We're going to talk about what that looks like in general. So, first and foremost, before we get into that, as I said, both of us are Black educators. Both of us, you know, are in the education system. As y'all know, I've taught social studies 7th through 12th grade. I taught literally every subject in social studies in the state of Tennessee. And my life as an educator has been very interesting, both as a teacher and as a student, or as a lifelong learner. And I really think education as a whole needs an overhaul, but I really think it needs it needs more for Black students and Black people in general in order for us to get to another level per se. So in order to get us started into this conversation, uh, Sir McGill, would you mind telling the class what got you involved in education? How did you get to this point of where now you are an assistant principal? I mean, you told me the story before, but how did you get involved in education, and what made you go so hard, or what makes you go so hard for teaching and educating our students?
That's a great question, honestly. And we have talked about it, man, on many occasions. And I guess where it began was in high school, right? So where I come from, small town, and basically everybody had a choice. Was, matter of fact, I put it this way. My dad told me, listen, you got military, college, or get out. So, and that was really in a sense what everybody had a choice of in our high school, right? So either go to the military, which they always came, it was kind of like a breeding ground. Everybody would go to the military right out of ROTC, or, right after playing sports if they couldn't get in college. And, you had the people who were smart enough to go to college, or some people went to different levels of college, right? Maybe not a 4-year college, but they went to a vocational college, different things like that. So that was a push for our school. And then other than that, you had to get out of high school, so you got to go somewhere else. And wherever you ended up was just where you ended up. And so, man, it was growing up, I didn't realize what I was in. I'll speak that truth. And I was always in the top. I was in the gifted programs, honors in those terms. So I would say I was a smart kid, or I found a way to work the system. And so when I got to high school, I wanted to go into mechanics. I wanted to go to a vocational school, but my counselor, she wouldn't let me apply to the program. So hopped in college courses, realized I can still work the system, and I did well. So I decided to go to college, and I attended the College of Charleston, which is predominantly all white, but it's not your typical South Carolina school. And for those who don't know, I am born and raised South Carolina, still here, holding it down, proud and loud. But it is about time to go. So in a sense, where I got to college, that's when it hit me, because I had to realize I was in, my band director in high school. He helped me get a feel of how to get into college. He said, listen, if you want to pay for it, which my parents didn't have the money to do it. So they said, listen, you better find a way, which I did. So I started applying for music, because I was in band and getting band scholarships here and there. But I decided to go to College of Charleston and got into a Call Me Mr. program, because my assistant principal said, hey, listen, if you want to go in education or you want to go into nursing, as a Black man, you'll get in there and you'll be straight. This is what they told me in high school. And I was like, you know what, let me look into it, because I was always teaching others in some way, shape, or form. So I was okay with it and got into Call Me Mr. And that's when I realized at college, I was the top of my program, but everybody else around me had a completely different level of education, right? They learned a lot of different things that wasn't even afforded to my school, which brought me into what they call the corridor of shame in South Carolina. So to make a long story short, corridor of shame was basically showing me how my education, which was the top, was the lowest education available in South Carolina. And that just kind of made me aware of what's going on. And when I got out of college, I got into a very Black community, the hood, what a lot of people would consider it, where I had kids coming to school saying my house got shot up. I'm seeing kids coming to school with guns. So it was a really, it was a community that I was looking to be in. And just working with them, I found a way to make it work. I found a way to make an impact. And I started seeing how to help them cheat the system. But now what I'm understanding in a leadership role in a completely different environment, where I'm in a building where parents are Fortune 500s, these are doctors, parents are coming through the car line and they're pilot suits. You know, they're about to go fly a plane when they're dropping their kid off. So it's a completely different world. And again, the race is different, as you can see, and you would assume. So now I think that I've come up with at least a system where if we start working with our kids, that we can help them out. We can change the next generation to come.
I like that. I like that you brought that up as far as like how your experience growing up in the corridor of shame and then being able to juxtapose it against like what juxtapose that against like the students that you're now serving. And it's interesting that you bring that up because in my doctoral classes, which for those that have been watching and been keeping up with the episodes thus far, in the last episode, we spoke with Leanna Pearson and we were talking about privilege. And we talked about how, you know, it's a privilege that, you know, people are able to, you know, afford certain things or have certain opportunities and things like that afforded or awarded to them, you know, for them to be able to achieve a level of status or self-determination and things like that. And even in that sense, or even beyond that, we had readings in some of our textbooks that talk about, you know, the things and manners in which, or the barriers in which that keep Black students from achieving those things, or that keep, you know, that hinder or continually hinder Black students or, you know, Latina students or LGBTQ plus students or whomever from reaching a certain level. And then when you look at it from an actual physical real life standpoint, a lot of people still don't seem to not get that there's still a gap between what it is or what you think it is and what it really is. And so it's interesting that you brought that up because I don't think a lot of people understand, excuse me, that you can be in this group of people that have come from a negative quote unquote aspect of life, or come from a poor aspect of life, or come from a downtrodden aspect of life, or whatever deficit thinking that you may have, but still be able to go and serve a group of people to either A, reinforce that, you know, or B, send them into an entirely different direction. And it's dope that you had people, you know, that were I guess the word is conscious enough. And I'm using that loosely, not in the term of like being woke, but conscious enough to understand that you were going in a different direction. And what's troubling to me about that, just in general, is the fact that we don't provide that for all of our kids. Because at the end of the day, not to sound, gotta find the word there, not to sound restrictive, that's probably not the word that I want to use, but we're gonna go with it. But it's Black kids that's always got the short end of the stick, regardless of how you want to look at it. Even if they are the most affluent, they're still missing something. It's like we talked about in the last episode that Kanye even said, you still a nigga in a coupe. You can have the freshest Benz, you push all the nice whips and chains and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, because of the system that we live in, you're still not going to be on that higher echelon as others may be around you. And so it's interesting that you bring it up. And so now I kind of want, I'm interested in knowing how does like that experience, like how does that play into like your day-to-day administrative duties? Like, because like for those that don't know, like what because you kind of gave an idea of like what the demographics of your school looks like, at least based on class, but like what does your school demographics look like, and then how does your experience help play into that?
Well, currently my school demographics is 100%. Not 100. Let me back up. No, actually, I know the accurate number. I looked it up the other day. It's about 97% white and 2%, and there's like another 1%. But to speak true to those numbers, come to find out, a lot of our students who are Indian, not Native American, but Indian, are claiming white in the documents. You know, so there's a lot of students who may not be white who are claiming white in our community. And so out of the staff, those are students. So out of the staff, we have one Black teacher. In my school, we have one Black teacher, one Black assistant, and 2 Black janitors outside of myself. So that's where I am. And I think the experience I have, man, it gives me the freedom to not give a fuck, right? So it gives me that freedom. So in the room, I come in one as a first year. So everybody has that expectation. It's just like, okay, he's still learning. And I give off that because I'm always in a learning stage. And another thing is during COVID. So everybody has a leniency there too. So it's like, all right, everything's different for everybody. And this is his first year. So a lot of people have given me, I think, not a break, but they're more understanding, you know, just for my title and my position. But I think for who I am as a Black man coming in there, it's a lot of people are just waiting for me to mess up. So, and this is coming from this is coming from the principal of the school, like sitting me down, having conversations like, hey, listen, all eyes are on you. I'm like, and that's okay. And this is coming from a superintendent of the, who was just in that district. He's telling me the same thing. Listen, all eyes are on you. And he's a Black man who just left an all white district as well. So he left the district I'm in. So he was just like, listen, because they know I know you, more people are watching you as well. And I was like, that's all right. And you ask from my experience coming up where I was, man. In high school, I was called a nigger by a grown man. In high school, we had where the chief fire department guy, whoever was over the fire department, his daughter was white and she dated a Black kid. He shut down the whole high school basically. The principal had to get involved, so they didn't want the kids dating because it was a Black kid and a white girl, a Black guy and a white girl, so this is where I've already had that realization, where the KKK is around the corner from my house. So, I mean, to say, how does it faze me? Like I said, it gives me the freedom to not give a fuck. So I'm just aware now, and I'm able to lead how I lead. I'm able to do what I do, say what I say. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, and because then that makes me wonder: do you face any pushback from your parents, from the parents of the students, anytime you make a decision or make a directive or something like that? Or let's say Lil Johnny got in trouble for, we can't really do this in COVID, but if we were in online learning, let's say let's take the same issue of the little boy that was in Colorado, I think, who got suspended from online school because he had a Nerf gun.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think you would, if you would have, took the same action, what do you think that pushback from your parents would look like? Because if that's what you're facing, if that's what you faced growing up, and, it's the South, what do we expect, Because, y'all know I grew up in Memphis, not Tennessee, because y'all know I don't fuck with the state. Y'all know this. But even growing up in Memphis, there was still a lot of pushback. Like, I even received a lot of pushback being in a predominantly Black school with Black administrators, because we were still following a very Eurocentric model of education, or a Eurocentric way of discipline, or a Eurocentric way of doing anything. And I even received pushback on parents for a lot of decisions that I would make, And so, and even the same thing could be said when I was teaching in Nashville and Knoxville. Do you receive pushback from parents because you are the Black administrator?
Honestly, I think people are braced for it You know, they prepared themselves to feel like they're attacked by the black man, you know? But because, man, I've done so much research, honestly, me and I read a lot, right? So before even getting into this position, I read, communication books. I read how to have those conversations. And I've had to, do the digging inside myself to not get stirred in those moments and flustered, right? To the point that it takes me out of myself. And with the discipline, we had a little kid bring it was kind of like a knife, to school. So I had to deal with him, fifth grader. And the way when I present it to you, you have no choice but to either deny it or accept it. So it's not like an open conversation, to put it frankly to you, which is why I say, it's like, hey, this is what your son did today, and this is what I did. In his consequence, he's still in my office. To the point like that, he's going to sit here and read a book for the rest of the day. That was his consequence. So because we can't, it's not the environment and it's not the community that they suspend kids, which gave me a different perspective of where I came from when I was in the all Black community. Because the leadership there was to get rid of them. Leadership here is, regardless of what happens, we have to keep them, because there's nowhere to send them. And this is a white to white, right? So now that made me reflect, well, why is our mentality to get rid of them? You see what I'm saying?
And that really just made me think that, because I did a paper on this September. Yeah, September. And I wrote about zero tolerance policies and exclusionary punishments, and how when we use zero tolerance policies and exclusionary punishments, there's a laundry list of effects that it has on Black students. But I always wonder, why is that the first thing we go to? Which, I mean, anybody that pays remote attention to the school to prison pipeline, that's the answer to the question. Yeah. Or if you were a Black student in anybody's school system, because that's predominantly Black or, mixed bag or what have you, it's always like you just said, the first, move is to get them out of school. And we know that doesn't have a beneficial effect on kids, period. We know that contributes to the achievement gap. And I put that in air quotes for a reason, because me personally, I don't think that the achievement gap really is a thing. And the reasoning why is because of all of the systemic things that are either not taken into context or are direct, or is made, or the achievement gap essentially is a direct result of those, systemic issues that we have in education, and not just education, in society. And right. So my thing is like, because y'all have that set up in place to where, this is the thing that this is how we do things. I wonder if, and I want to hear your opinion on this. I wonder if how things would be different if we took the same approach with Black kids. Because the thing is, I feel like and I can only speak from my own experience, teaching in Memphis, where I was de facto administrator for a lot of my students. I was teaching 4 preps, playing de facto guidance counselor. I was co-senior sponsor and student government advisor. But because I recognized almost immediately, and this is like literally the second day of school, I recognized that they were trying to get kids out of there just to make test scores look better instead of actually teaching the kids, which that is like, if you want a quick way for me to curse you the fuck out, that's it right there. And so when I recognized that, as a teacher, I made it a point to go and intervene with a lot of my kids. Like, I remember one time, one of my students was about to get his ass handed to him because he called another student a bitch. Now, of course, with masculinity, dudes don't want to be called a bitch. Don't nobody want to be called out their name, of course. But then at the same time, you also, have on the other side of that, like, if this child does this literally could be the end of it for him. Not the one that's on the receiving end of getting his ass whooped, but the one that's on the end of dealing the blows. It's like, and he wasn't a bad kid. He just was a child he wasn't necessarily, misunderstood, because that's not the way, that wasn't him. He was a child that was neglected in a sense. And I would say like it's emotional neglect than anything else. But I was always the person that had to step in and would see something or would hear something that happened in somebody else's class, and we break out for lunch, and I'm walking in the cafeteria and I'm telling them, bring your ass here, because I'm finna get you, because you know better. And as soon as they see me coming, they be like, bruh. And I'm like, because you know I don't play with that. and so it's like, in doing that, at least in my experience, that in itself was the biggest, like made a huge impact on the kids, because one, they stayed their ass in school.
Right.
Two, they were able to come to class. Three, they didn't have these suspensions, all these excessive suspensions on their record. And then four, on top of that, they was actually learning something in class because they was actually there in school. And so I guess to my question is, what is your opinion on that? What do you think that would look like for Black students as a whole, especially given the, way in which, or the environment in which that you grew up in your school system? Like, how do you think that would be different if we did that for our students and not just the other?
Right. Honestly, I think it'll play a part, right, to the larger puzzle. And I want to start by saying that, because I don't think it'll solve the issue that we have with our Black students, right, with our students that we've been working with. And that puts me in the mind of when I was at my first school, me and you used to call, man, all the crazy days and all the crazy moments that used to go on a consistent basis, right? So I was that go-to guy for a lot of the kids, especially on my hallway. I can say that. Now, if it's on another hallway, I can't control it too much, but it began to spread. And a lot of teachers on other halls, certain classes, they knew if a student I was connected with, because I started a mentor program there. And at that point, once they were in my program, it was a wrap, because they knew, the teachers understood, if something goes on, I'm the first one to find out. So, and at that point, I just understood that they just needed somebody in their ear consistently giving them positivity, whether it's with a consequence involved as well. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be to the point, man, where I had a deck of cards, and I'll sit the deck of cards down. Let's just say they got suspended. Listen, man. Well, before they got suspended, they just cursed somebody out in the class. I tell them, you got to go halfway through the deck. Whatever you pick, that's how many push-ups. And they just going right there. And I'm just saying, listen, what do you need to change? Why do you not need to be here? What do you need to do differently? You know what I'm saying? Just asking those questions. And after a while, kids didn't get in trouble. And I'm not saying it was consistent. Kids gonna be kids in the environment they're in. When they get outside of the school, it was a completely different story, because they lived their life. And they were living lives that I wouldn't want for a kid. But that's where we are, to live how they live. But to answer your question more specifically, how do I feel like that'll benefit them? I feel like you said, that'll help them stay there. That'll help them stay out of the house. That'll help them stay out, from the streets, because now they're in the classroom. But I feel like in doing that, we also need to provide the resources surrounding the issue of the child. And I feel like that's a lacking piece.
It's interesting that you bring that up as well, because I'm writing another paper about that, about the issues in which contribute to the lack of just resources in general, or how the lack of resources contributes to a lot of the issues that go on in urban schools and go on in the Black community, and how what's going on in the community has a large impact on what happens in that school building. And I don't think a lot of people get that, or understand that, to say the least. How it's kind of like, what is it, that idea in biology? I think it's osmosis, where what's going on outside of the cell, in order to maintain balance, it travels within, like stuff travels within and out of the cell, to maintain balance. The fact that I remember that concept from biology, shout out to my biology teacher, because you did that. But people don't realize that, that in itself is a huge, like what goes on outside of the community, it has a huge impact on what goes on in the school. And when it comes to not having those resources and not having the funding or not having the supports or not having whatever is necessary to make what you need happen, that then leads kids down a path of no return to some extent, right?
Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, so because then you get to the conversations on, you know, school choice, right? And people are saying like, well, we should be able to take our kids and put them wherever we want to, especially because we want our child to have a good education and not be around all this, that, and the third. But then what about those kids that don't have that option to go do that? What about those kids that are stuck in that school, are stuck in that situation, and they can't go, you know, 5 miles up the street to the next charter school or the next local school or whatever to do what they have to do? And it's like, I have several solutions to that, but, you know, it just seems as if like we either and when I say we, I mean we as a society, either A, just don't give that much of a fuck, or B, we just feel like dragging our feet to make that happen. And it's like, at some point in time, if we want to, you know, kind of go back to this idea of the achievement gap, if we're trying to close the achievement gap, like a lot of people are saying, like, oh, we need to close the achievement gap, we need to do this. That's the very first thing we need to be trying to do, is find these resources for these kids. Like, I'm trying to figure out like what's hard about this conversation. What's difficult about this? Like, doesn't even make sense to be like, oh, well, we need to do this and we need to add more things to the standards and we need to make testing more rigorous. No, that's probably what you should probably be doing the opposite of that. But you know, I'm just the bitch that make the biscuits. I don't do anything important, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But I also like the idea. I want to go back to this mentoring aspect too, because you told me about your mentoring program, and I personally enjoyed it. You know, I was like, I'm here for this. But I want to know, not even necessarily more about the mentoring program, but like, I don't know if you can speak to this, but like, what kind of long-term effects do you think having those close relationships to those kids had on them, and then what did it have on you? Because all of that then ties back into Black education as a whole, because at least to me, I feel like us as educators, we're forever learners. You know, we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always, you know, doing something in order to expand our knowledge. But how did having that mentoring program, how did that affect them, or how do you think it affected them, and then how did it turn around and impact you?
The mentoring program, man, it was a good opportunity. It was a really good learning experience. I had maybe 15 to 25 kids at a time, all males. From, on average, it was probably the 2 white boys we had in the school, right? Because in that school, my first school, it was only about 3 white kids in the entire school. School about 350, 400 kids. I can tell you it's about 3 to 4 white kids. The rest is Black and Hispanic. And maybe we had another Malaysian student, right? It was something else. But basically Black and Hispanic. So it was the 2 white boys. And honestly, man, a few Hispanic kids and some Black dudes. And the kids always had problems outside of school. So all the things that I tried to do was, not to say it was to teach them how to be a man or anything like that, but it was just really to let them feel like they can ask those questions that they didn't get a chance to ask. Right? So we would always start in a circle just to open it up, see how everybody's doing, to actually teach them and give them the opportunity to talk about how they feeling, you know, and what's going on, if something's bothering you type deal. And the 8th graders started taking up for the 6th graders, right? You know, so it was, nah, you're not gonna mess with my boy, you know, outside of our group. They kind of turned into a little, you know, little boy fraternity. It's kind of cool. You know, man, and we just taught them how to cook, right? We taught them how to fold their own clothes, how to iron their own clothes, how to tie ties, how to do things, and just show them like, hey, listen, this is an opportunity for you. We took them to colleges. Because most of them, when we would leave leave the city we were in would say, man, this is my first time leaving. This is my first time going somewhere. You know, these are the conversations we had, you know, there was a female group and the counselor was over that one. And she was awesome, man. She was awesome. And I mentioned that to say one of the young girls, when we were going to a college, we were taking them to HBCU. And actually we were taking them down to South Carolina State in Claflin. So taking them there, the young lady started crying before we got on the bus. Like broke down hard, like, I don't want to go, bump it, like got angry, frustrated. We were just like, what's wrong? She was like, I've never left the city. And especially without my family. She said, I've never been anywhere without my mom and my sister. That's it. And so just to see in those moments that we were actually like helping these kids break barriers, like, listen, you don't have to stay here. You know, not to say this is not a place you can be, you know, if that's what you want to do, but this is not all there is, you know. And I would have conversations with a lot of them because some I don't think I've made an impact, if I speak my truth. I don't think, and I say that in terms of, I don't think I made an impact at that point to make a difference. But I do think I made an impact to the point of planting a seed where they always feel like they can reach back out. And I say that to say where I got one of them, man, he's a little Hispanic boy, he's out there now, you know, in gangs, and there's a lot of police conversations, and they, you know, mention it to me. They were like, hey, listen, you remember your boy? He's out there, he's gone. I'm just like, oh, okay. But now, and that was that was like 2 years ago when we had a conversation, and recently he reached out to me. He's like, hey man, listen, I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm just trying to get back on track. So that lets me know, like, I planted a seed, but it may have not made an impact at the moment. And I think that's all my goal is, because that's what education is. We can't make an impact right then, but we can always plant a seed. Maybe we can nurture it enough to make a difference, you know, where a kid can make a complete 180, and some did, but some didn't, you know, but that's just the way of life, right? We all make mistakes. We all have to go down our own path. But my goal was to give them an opportunity to know, like, I have a connection to somebody who's did it and somebody who's doing it. So at least I can say, like, hey man, listen, I don't know what's gonna work for you, but I know if you put in the work, it'll work because I've done it, you know? And I think now it's to the point to where that mentoring program showed me the system we have needs to be developed to nurture them. And not just boys, but to nurture our Black kids. And like you said, nurture our Hispanic kids. But that system that needs to be created can't be created without our hands in it. Because if Black people don't create the system, then it won't solve the problem for the Black people. So.
Woo, what a word right there. Black people do not create. I gotta make sure I put that down at the bottom so y'all can read it. Black people do not create the system. It will not get fixed. I really hope y'all sit on that after this damn presidential election. I really hope you do. Because that translates not just in education, but that applies to so many different things. And you know, we have conversations about, you know, Malcolm versus Martin, or W.B. Du Bois versus, you know, Booker T. Washington. We have these different conversations about, like, what's the best course of action. But at the end of the day, if we don't do the work, how can we expect things to change? Like, that's right. Literally practicing the definition of insanity. Like, I don't know how else to put it. I can't put it on nicer than that. You know, and the fact that you have that child was able to come back and be like, yo, I know I'm fucking up big time. I need some guidance, like, now.
Yeah.
It speaks to several different things. One, it speaks to the level of maturity that he has, regardless of what's going on around him. Let's start there. Two, it speaks to the work that you've put in to make sure that these kids get what they need in order to get to the next level. Because as you said, you planted the seed. Now, whether or not he watered it, gave it adequate sunlight and some carbon dioxide to grow, that ain't nothing to do with you. But it lets you know that, three, that, you know, that's what our kids need in order for them to be successful. Because white kids have it all the time. White kids have their history told to them in the textbook, even regardless of how wrong it may be, they get this idea of exceptionalism that is like, oh my God, I'm the greatest and I'm the best. We need to rewind that. They even though they may not get all of the supports that they need, they still don't have to deal with the excess bullshit that other minorities have to deal with. And I say minorities loosely because I mean, gonna keep it $1.50. If you're looking at a global scale, these groups of kids are not minorities, but we're not gonna get on that topic today. That's a hotel conversation that I'm not gonna get into today. But it's dope that you were able to have those experiences, and it makes me think back to my own experiences with my seniors this past year, where a lot of them still call me and text me to this day. Some of them they haven't hit me up, since the summertime, which I'm like, honestly, I get it. We all still trying to figure out what the hell all of this looks like. You're trying to start college. You literally just hit your adult life and you just got met with a pandemic at the same time. And it's like, it is like, what? But I mean, we lived through 9/11, so there's that. So I guess,
hey man, listen, we lived through a lot of things at this point, brother.
At this point, we have lived through a lot of stuff. We've lived through several global recessions, national recessions. We lived through
several pandemic, actually.
Right, like literally, we've lived through so much. Like our generation alone has lived through so much. It's not even funny, And so with my students, with my past students, like I get it, I understand. But like when I go back and I talk to them and I hit them up every now and again, like, just checking on you, make sure you good and stuff like that. They're like, yeah, everything's going good. Or if I see them on Snapchat or something like that, because most of them follow me on Snapchat for whatever reason. That was their decision. I told them, I said, you can follow me when I'm not your teacher. And right. They was like, and so let me get that Snapchat. I'm like, I don't post nothing, but go off. Do what you do. But, when I see what they post, some days I see them doing something and I text them like, now, good and goddamn well, I would break my foot off in your ass if I was in Memphis. You better get it together. But I can do that with them.
Right.
Because they have that level of trust within me, because they know that somebody gives just even remotely a fuck about them. And so it's dope that you were able to have those experiences and that you were able to plant that seed for those kids, because I really feel like if we had more educators like you, I mean, my God, we'd be unstoppable as it stands. I mean, we already are very resilient as a people, but
they're out there, man. They're out there.
I mean, and I'm not saying like that they're not out there. I just wish that the ones who were in the roles that don't do it like they need to do it or like it needs to be done, I really wish they would just exit stage left, just move. Because
I mean, I do believe playing to that issue, and a piece to that issue is the narrative that's been told, right? And so in college, I had a professor, Dr. Harris, man, he's an awesome man. I'll speak his name, so please look into his research and everything. And he taught about narratives in his research, and I had the opportunity to do an internship with him. And I realized during that time that depending on, and it's a very simple concept, right? So if somebody gets in a fight at school, right? Let's say two kids get in a fight in the bathroom. One kid gonna tell a story when he get home. Another kid gonna tell a story when he get home. Well, who the people gonna listen to? The person in charge. The phone call they get from the principal. That's the real story. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, and at that point, the narratives begin to change because everybody's gonna interpret everything, differently. But that's not to say anybody's story was wrong. It was just to say that's how their narrative was perceived. But it's whose narrative is taken. That's the question. Whose narrative are we going to take in? And I think at this point, there's been a narrative that's been pushed and taken in. And it's not to say that narrative is wrong, because here in America, white kids learn, as you stated earlier, that they're the shit. And in their narrative, bro, they are. We're like, if we take ourselves out of, you know, race and culture and say, what, there was a lot of fucked up shit that took place. They did some things, and they did a lot of, you know, good things. And they are raised to learn the things that they did and how great they were. So if you go to China right now, kids are growing up to learn all the great things that they did and how great they are. You go to Russia, they learn that. You go to New Zealand, bro, wherever you go, kids are learning about how great they are and what they've done where they are. And I think those are the narratives that people put out. You see what I'm saying? Everybody has their own narrative of the reality, but guess what? We have a reality of China. We have a narrative for China. We have a narrative of what's going on in Russia, but that doesn't mean that that's their narrative. And that's not the narrative that their kids are growing up learning. So their kids have a different perspective of Russia. So I think the issue has become in America, our Black kids, our Black American kids are receiving the losing narrative because it's coming from a winning culture, right? But in reality, we have a winning narrative, and their narrative is not being told. So my belief is that if we teach them that winning narrative, everything else, it won't be a problem.
Ooh, I love that. So now you know we gotta pivot to this because we've had this conversation before. But I wanna pose to you I guess not necessarily a case study, but like my professors have been making us do this all semester. So I'm in the mindset of posing it to you. So one of my professors had us do a case study assignment where we were acting as an administrator, which for some of my classmates, some of them are administrators. Like I have one of my classmates who is literally a principal.
Okay.
Head of the game of the school, and you telling her to imagine that you're an admin, and she's like, "Well, girl, I'm already doing that." But all right. And so the case study would say something like, you know, you had this issue or this issue or this issue in your school or whatever. So my question to you, as far as your case study is concerned, is say that you have the opportunity excuse me, y'all know I hate the English language. You have the opportunity to either A, open up your own school, or B, take over a school. In order to make sure those narratives, that winning narrative is taught or is conveyed to your kids, what does that look like, or what steps would you take in order to make that happen? Because I think right now, I think if Dr. Umar Johnson is trying to open up a school over in Delaware, which I personally want to get up and go see one day, because I mean, I'm not that far from Delaware apparently. So I kind of want to, hopefully with COVID, be over within the next 4 or 5 years, or, you know, soon, so I can go see it in person. But we have, you know, people like him, and we have, you know, LeBron James started his own school, and we have all these different people opening up charter schools across the nation, right? And they are all taking a different approach or a different stance as far as trying to close the achievement gap and actually, you know, raise our students, you know, to a better and higher standard. So imagine you have all these different things, you know, and you're already in this admin position, but imagine that you're at the top position. What would you do in order to make sure that our kids had what they need in order to A, internalize that winning narrative, but then to B, take that same energy and go and be great beyond the 4 walls of your school building?
First of all, I will start off by saying, and you know, I'm a country boy, born and raised. So I don't believe you can catch, you know, you don't catch fish with the same bait, right? So, and it takes, you know, different things to catch different kids. So I'm not saying the idea that I have will catch all our Black community, because some are successful. We have proof, right? Me and you are living proof that we can be successful. So I'm not saying that my system will save us all, but I do believe that some of us need a new perception of self. And so what I believe, in my opinion, would be a solution to that problem is to have the school be based on knowing yourself, knowing thyself, and knowing where you came from, where you are in reality to others in perception, and where you can be. Because this is where you have people who have already done this. You see what I'm saying? So I don't think that conversation is had in the Black household because we don't have that pushed in our eyes. We don't have that pushed in our ears, not consistently. The things and the narratives that we are pushed on, is in a negative perspective. So to add on to knowing thyself, then you have to know yourself mentally. So understanding psychology and understanding human thought would be another piece of that. And then just understanding how to continue to be healthy, how to continue to live, and understanding that you can teach yourself whatever you need to know to get to where you gotta go. And I know that's a broad stance, but that's just really the simple solution. Know thyself, know your thoughts, and know where you gotta go and how to get there.
So then would you consider your framework, I sound like my professors now, would you consider your framework or your lens to be more of a Afro-centered kind of education, or what approach are you taking, or what approach would you take from it?
So to go back to that, it's like when you ask would I have my own school or join a school, I feel like you can do both, right? There needs to be a Black school where Black kids are learning their Black history. That needs to be created. That needs to happen, which I'm working on. So I go ahead and drop that seed out there. It's known, it's said. So that's going to happen. It's going to be done. And it's turning into the point where in the regular school, I feel like a shift in Americans' education, right? And how we educate our population of students. What we need to do is go to embracing what you truly are. So let's not just say you're white. Let's not just say you're Black, because in some historical point, let's not just say you're Hispanic. You know where you came from. Your people know, especially, and let me just go right here directly to the white community. A lot of the white community know where they came from, right? So if you go in their household, you be like, hey, what we having for dinner? Oh, we're going to my grandma's house. She's making some Swedish balls. What? Oh yeah, we're going to my grandma's house. She's making some chimichangas. We're actually Hispanic. You see what I'm saying? So those conversations come out, but it's like, oh, I'm actually Irish. I'm actually, like people know where they're from. So in our education, let's just start educating on where we're actually from and how everybody can do great things instead of saying we're great, we're one, and you have to be this or that.
I like that. I really do like that, and I'm glad that you brought up the fact of of starting this this education institution. I don't even know the correct terminology. Again, trying to use here because I hate English language, but whatever. Because it's like I honestly think, even though me personally, I despise charter systems and stuff like that. I despise it, and I feel like we can do with what we got. We could do a lot with what we have, but I think a lot of people aren't necessarily trying to make that happen. So yeah. It is what it is. We do what we do, and all we can do is grow from there. So before we get out of here for the day, any last comments, questions, concerns, cries of outrage for the good of the order?
All I say is, man, just start researching who you are. That's the last piece I got. Research who you are, and then spread the word. That's what we're here to do.
All right. You got any socials people can follow you on? They can hear great things about you, or you just like, nah?
Man, Fabien McGill. That's it. Fabien McGill. FABIEN MCGILL. That's me. You literally type that into social media, you'll find me wherever you gotta go. Twitter, Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I don't talk on it, but you'll find me there.
You definitely don't be there.
Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, that's where I'm at, brother. That's me.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming out here. I appreciate you for gracing the presence of Introspective Thoughts. Y'all know where to follow me. The stuff is down there. It's probably scrolling down there somewhere at the bottom. If not, it's in the description box. Whatever, do what y'all got to do. Until next time, if y'all ain't got nothing else to say, nothing else to do, please be careful out here because I don't know what the hell is getting ready to pop off in the United States. Regardless of what side of the aisle you on, these niggas is crazy. Do what you got to do. Stay safe. Stay strapped. Every time you hit the club, folk give you that, folk give you love. Still stay strapped. That's all I'm gonna say. But until next time, y'all be great, and I holla.
Hold it down, brother.